Honestly, I expected this type of thing from Mr. McKelvey, but I was more than a little disappointed in Chuck. He and I had several cases together, and although he was always slimy in a used car salesman kind of way, at least his clients tended to seem honest, at least to me. Then there came a knock at the conference room door. The door opened and the receptionist peeked in. Mr. Danube, a courier from Mr. Swinton's office, just dropped this off. In her hand was a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Based upon its shape, it appeared to be the security tape. I was hopeful that the store was able to find him on the security cameras and that whatever they found refuted his testimony. "I wonder if that's the security tape," I asked out loud. Mr. Danube and his client shot worried looks to one another. "Chuck, do you have a VCR and television that we could use? We could go off record and watch it now if you like." Within a few minutes, the receptionist had brought in a small black and white television with an integrated VCR tape player. We excused the court reporter and the receptionist and crowded around the little TV screen. The video showed a small corner of the electronics department. The counter in the lower right corner indicated a time within minutes of Mr. McKelvey's purchase. After about 10 seconds, a person pushing a cart with a big screen TV in it entered the frame. He pushed the cart to what was very nearly the center of the frame. He stopped and looked around for a few seconds and then pushed the cart over on its side. The TV spilled out onto the floor. The man then dropped to the floor, pulled the TV on top of himself, and appeared to start wailing. I say appeared because the video did not have any sound to it. Within seconds, a store associate rushed to the man's aid and the video ended. Although the quality of the video was not the greatest, there was no doubt that the person in the video was Mr. McKelvey. After the video cut out, the three of us sat there in an awkward silence. I was trying to keep myself from laughing out loud. "Did you want to take a moment and speak with your client before we go back on the record, Chuck?" He was stunned and still staring at the blank screen. "Yeah, maybe that would be a good idea." Mr. McKelvey interrupted. "Can I go hit the restroom real fast?" He did not wait for a response and was out the door before Chuck could object. I got up from the table and went to the window. I had already started to create a new line of questioning in my head. How would I address the video with Mr. McKelvey once we got back on the record? "You know," Chuck started, and I turned to look at him. Does not really change anything." I turned from the window to face him fully. "Excuse me?" The look in his face had changed. His usual pleasant demeanor changed to one much more menacing. I think he was actually angry. The fact remains he entered the store without any pain, and he left it in severe pain. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Mr. Swinton, you know the law as well as I do. You owe your business invitees the highest level of care, and your client fell short of that, plain and simple." I turned back to the window to avoid saying something I would later regret. I stared out to the top floor of the parking lot below. I saw a man running, literally running full steam away from the building across the top floor of the parking garage. "Hey Chuck, isn't that your client out there?" "What?" Chuck joined me at the window. Sure enough, there was Mr. McKelvey running to his car in the parking lot. "What is he doing?" Chuck was at a loss. "Looks like he's leaving to me, Chuck." "Why?" "I don't know. Crisis of conscience, maybe?" Once again I found myself with the ladies after a hard day at work. It was early evening. I had bagged out of work early and was not in the mood to go home just yet. I thought that maybe a beer and some wings would take away some of the leftover frustration and cynicism of the day before I inflicted myself upon my family. When I arrived that evening, the place was not very busy. It was not common for it to be so, but not unusual either. I slipped into a booth in the back of the pub. I hadn't been sitting very long when the waitress appeared next to my booth. "What can I get you, sweetheart?" I was sending a message on my phone and did not see her walk up to the table. By the way, it was a new cell phone, a generation newer than the one that fat bastard pulled from his waistband months before. It had some nice features, and it had all the bells and whistles. The firm had provided it to me another perk of my new position. The waitress had not startled me, but I was a little embarrassed that I was not prepared to order. "Excuse me, sorry, I didn't see you." I fumbled with and then dropped my phone. I reached for the menu that was attached to the table centerpiece. Let me just take a quick look here." "Would you like me to come back in a few minutes?" "Yeah, that would be great." "No problem, hon. I'll be back in a quick." She spun around and walked back towards the bar. I looked up and watched as she walked away. She was cute, young and slender. She was wearing black form-fitting jeans and a black t-shirt that she wore in just such a manner to let you know that she was quite fit. I could not see her face as she walked away, and regretted not looking up while she was at my table. From what I could see at that point, I didn't think she was one of the regular waitresses, but something about her was kind of familiar. She reached the bar and turned toward it, which allowed me to view the profile of her face. I knew her face, but was not immediately sure from where. Small, sharp features, dark eyes. I suddenly recognized her as the girl I had seen here at the ladies months before, the night I made an ass of myself by falling off my stool. I hoped that she had not recognized me. That would have been too embarrassing. I thought about our encounter then and now. She did not seem to have recognized me, but I could not be sure. I decided that I would just try to avoid making eye contact, and maybe nothing would come of it. True to her word, she returned shortly. "Okay, hon, what do you need?" "You mean other than a new job?" The moment the words left my mouth, I was surprised and embarrassed that they had come from me. It was almost as though I had lost control of myself, and the words issuing forth from my lips, although reflected what was going on in my head, somehow managed to bypass the natural filter that normally sits between a person's brain and their mouth. "Did you lose your job?" "Nah, just sick of the one I have." "But you do all right, don't you?" I was startled by her response, and wondered what she was basing her judgment on. "I see you in here a lot. You dress nice and you tip well." She had recognized me. But tipping? Had she served me before? "What could be so bad? What kind of work do you do, anyway?" "I'm an insurance defense lawyer specializing in premises liability." "Hey, that sounds cool." "No, not really. Just a fancy way of saying I defend companies in slip and fall cases." "Yeah, but you're a lawyer, right?" "Yes, but it's not like you see in the movies or on TV. It's actually work, and the pay is not as good as you might think." "Sounds like a first world problem to me." She smiled a warm, friendly smile that flattered me. A young, pretty girl smiling at an older man. The insinuation, or at least how I took it, being that she did not think I was doing all that bad, I appreciated it. Over the next several weeks, I continued to return to the ladies for my regular after-work breaks. I almost always found her there, either working or hanging out. She lived nearby and worked at the pub part-time. She was attending school full-time on scholarship and was hoping to work in the entertainment industry someday. Her name, by the way, was Brittany, which makes sense because she was a millennial, and aren't they all named Brittany? Whenever she saw me, she would come and sit with me and we would trade stories about one another's lives. We discovered that she grew up only about half a mile from where I did in the suburbs of Philadelphia. She was familiar with all the same places and people I knew. Of course, to her, they were very nearly historical facts, but it was still fun to spend time with someone with whom you share a common background with. I will admit that having someone like her spending time with me felt nice too. She was young, I think she told me 26, and pretty and fit, as most women that age seemed to be. She possessed a spark to her, an inherent intelligence that was both intimidating and refreshing at the same time. She was also a relentless optimist. Not in an annoying way, but rather in an inspiring way. No matter what state you were in when you met up with her, you were always happy and inspired when you left her presence, and were excited to see her again. At this point, let me address the elephant in the room. While I will concede that she was very pretty, I will not say that the thought never crossed my mind, our relationship was not at all sexual. I was profoundly aware of the fact that she was almost 20 years younger than I was. While for some that is a turn-on, it is not for me. Nevertheless, I felt that we both got something from our frequent conversations. She made me feel good about myself, and I gave her a willing ear to bend about whatever she wanted to talk about. It was a fair trade. During one of our evenings over some beers, the conversation turned again to my work. "You still hating what you do?" "Yeah, I don't think it is the work that has changed. I think it is me. The work is the same thing over and over. I'm simply sick of doing it. I wish I could do something else. I mean, you hear about these people all the time that do what they like. If you do what you like, they say, you will never work a day in your life. They say, do something you're passionate about, and the money will come. To me, the only way that is possible is if someone is bankrolling you." She smiled. "I hear you, but I have to admit, I kind of agree with that philosophy." "Of course you do, Britt. Go ahead and explain." She had been sitting across from me in the booth, leaning forward on her elbows. She was wearing some type of khaki-colored mesh top and a black bodysuit beneath. Her hair was up in a ponytail that was peeking out from under a dark-colored baseball cap. She had apparently either just come from or was going to the gym to work out. In response to my request, she sat back and drew in a deep breath. She was stalling to gather her thoughts on the matter. I could tell that she was getting ready to tell one of her silver lining stories. She pulled her legs up beneath her to sit cross-legged on the booth bench. "You see, it's like this," she started. "I had this friend in California. He was really into astronomy and astrophotography. You know, taking pictures of stars and the like." I nodded. "Well, this was something he really enjoyed doing. He grew up on Star Wars and Star Trek and always had a thing for science and science fiction. Problem was, he was a little old to start a new career as an astronaut, so he figured the next best thing would be to look into space, since he couldn't go there himself." "Sounds like somebody I know all too well," I muttered, almost to myself. "Right, but he didn't sit on his ass, feeling bad for himself. No offense," she smiled again. "None taken, but this had better be good, Brett." "Oh, it is. Anyway, you take pictures and you want to share them with others. Not only are they beautiful, but they have serious scientific significance to them. You can show them to your friends and family, but it would be nice to share them with others who truly understand what they are and can appreciate them." So this guy starts a social media website for people who like astrophotography. He works with a software designer to create this almost Facebook-like website that allows users to share their work and interact in a meaningful way. Fast forward 2 years, and he has over 100,000 members and has monetized the site. He generates a modest income from the site. The cool thing, from the exposure, no pun intended, he is now part of this astrophotography community that he literally created and travels around the world giving talks and participating in astronomy-related events. He even has deals with astronomy companies who pay him to try out their new products and write about them on his site. From his point of view, he's just doing what he loves and manages to make a nice living and have a fun time doing it. She was quite satisfied with herself and crossed her arms in front of her chest, daring me to burst her bubble.